I am proposing that the Promise Board develop a rule requiring recipients to work in West Virginia following graduation as a condition of not having to pay back the Promise Scholarship.
Big changes may be coming to the Promise Scholarship Program. Welcome to Outlook. I'm Beth Vorhees. In his State of the State address, Governor Manchin made clear he wants to place conditions on the Promise Scholarship. Promise recipients would have to reimburse the state if they leave West Virginia upon graduation.
The Promise Scholarship has been a great program that I want to see continue. But I think in order to make sure that the people of West Virginia are getting a return on the substantial investment they're making in these students' futures, we need to ensure that our native sons and daughters look seriously at their career options here before assuming that the pastures might be greener on the other side of the state line.
Anna Sale joins us now to discuss this proposal and others the governor made during his State of the State address. Anna, welcome. So what was the reaction to the governor's Promise proposal?
Well, the audience clapped, but then you could hear sort of a whisper in the crowd. So I think people didn't really know what to think about it. I talked to WVU President Mike Garrison and Marshall University President Stephen Kopp about the proposal. They both didn't seem to know too much about it. President Kopp said, well, this means we've got to work hard to make sure there are jobs for our graduates. President Garrison went a step further. He said he wants to talk to faculty because he said the most important thing is they continue to attract high-quality students to campus, and if there's this added requirement, who knows if they'll still go to West Virginia schools. A lot of details still have to be worked out about this. This kind of came out of nowhere for the governor. It's not been really talked about by the governor before. There's been little mentions of it in the legislature here and there, that maybe Promise should be restructured so that more of our best and brightest stay in the state. But this is the kind of issue that the legislature can really sink its teeth into. There's going to be a lot of debate, a lot of details, and a lot of thought about the Promise Scholarship and whether or not it should change. Yeah, those are some of the questions I have. The way the governor structured his proposal, he said he wants the Promise Board to develop this rule, and he wants to make staying in West Virginia a condition of not having to pay back the Promise Scholarship. So the two questions I have are, if the Promise Board is the group that's going to be considering this, what role will the legislature even have this session? Is this going to just be before the Promise Board and the legislature doesn't get to weigh in until a rule comes before them some time from now? And the other question, not having to pay back, does that mean that he wants the Promise Scholarship to become a loan program that's forgivable if you stay in the state? Other questions are, how long do you have to stay? Or what if you live in Huntington and have a job in Ashland, Kentucky? Does that mean you have to pay back the Promise Scholarship? All sorts of questions that we don't have answers for yet. And again, I want to make sure everybody knows the Promise Scholarship is paid for by excess video lottery money. That's where the money for Promise comes from. Yeah, and I want to point out there has been talk about reining in the cost of the Promise Scholarship. In previous years, it's been about should we raise the standards to restrict the number of students who are eligible. The governor has alluded to this and says he doesn't think that's fair. You know, students with less means might not have the opportunity to have tutoring and that sort of thing that more well-off students have. So this could be a way to restrict and rein in the amount of money that has to go towards Promise Scholarships. So moving on, the university presidents were a little leery of the Promise proposals, but they were very excited about what the governor called Bucks for Jobs. What does that mean? Bucks for Jobs is a big proposal. There are a couple parts to it. The parts that President Garrison and President Kopp were most excited about was Bucks for Brains. And this is a project that's modeled after something the University of Kentucky has done. The governor proposed $50 million, a one-time investment to set up an endowment fund. And the interest from this endowment fund would go towards research at Marshall and WVU. It would have to be matched dollar for dollar with private monies, and it would be split 70% of the interest income on this endowment fund could go to WVU, 30% to Marshall. And the governor described in his speech he wants this to stimulate high-tech research, the types of things that will create spin-off companies and create new industries in West Virginia. And Marshall University has had some success in this kind of area, starting some research at the school and spinning it off to a company that provides jobs and provides services from the state. Talking about education, the governor did not really mention pay raises for teachers. He alluded to it a little bit. He said he wants to continue to make responsible strides in paying for teachers. He talked about wanting to make sure counties use some of their local share of state funds that they got some more flexibility last year. He wants to make sure that money is going towards teacher pay raises. That's all he really said in the speech. We got some more details in his budget proposal yesterday. He wants a 3% raise for across the board for education professionals, another $400 across the board for classroom teachers. And then another thing that I thought was really interesting was he wants to set aside one time $20 million to set up a fund for signing bonuses in areas of what he calls critical need. And that's areas, subjects like science or math in particular counties where they've had difficulty finding certified teachers, have this money available to give signing bonuses to teachers.
What did the teachers' unions think about these proposals?
They weren't happy about it. West Virginia AFT, American Federation of Teachers, like last year during the State of the State, they gathered a lot of their members in the halls of the Capitol and they were protesting and shouting and chanting before the speech. They want $10,000 over 3 years, $5,000 raise this year, $2,500 the next 2 years. West Virginia Education Association, the other teachers union, is also not happy with what the governor's proposed. They don't have a specific proposal. They want to be moved up to this national average, and they say this is a moving target, but we got to be moving in that direction. But something interesting, Charles DeLauder, the president of the West Virginia Education Association, told me the signing bonus idea he thinks has problems behind it. He says, think about, the kind of resentment that might breed in a school if you hire a 24-year-old math teacher who comes in, gets a $4,000 or $5,000 signing bonus, whereas the math teacher down the hall who's been there for years doesn't get that money. He said that kind of opens up a can of worms that he doesn't think will be good for public education.
Well, we'll see how that goes, because remember last year the governor proposed a 2.5% pay raise for teachers. The legislature granted them a 3.5%. There might be a little flexibility there, but there's going to be some talk in the hallways about this particular raise. He opened up his speech talking about state employees, and usually governors don't do that, but he talked about state employees, really lauding state employees for all the hard work they do and have done for the state for years. But he didn't talk about the raise that he wants to propose for state employees.
Yeah, he actually called them unsung heroes, which is not usually how you hear state employees talked about. He didn't mention this in his speech, but his budget proposal outlines a 3% across the board raise for state employees. What
didn't he mention in his speech that we know is a part of his budget proposal that he handed the Senate President and the Speaker of the House last night?
Well, sort of conceptually, something I thought was missing that I really got from going over this budget proposal with his aides was, look, we're beginning our 4th year in office. We've had surpluses, and for the first couple of years, we've put that money in unfunded liabilities. We've tried to put ourselves on better financial footing. This year, we're in a slightly different situation. We still have some extra money, but that extra money is not going to be around forever, so we don't want to build in new budget items that we have to pay year after year. But here's some one-time things that we're going to do, this bucks for jobs type thing, this $20 million for signing bonuses. But the governor didn't really have a sentence where he said that, which I think it's kind of,
It was really unclear.
Yeah.
It really was unclear about what his focus is going to be during this session.
Yeah. Another thing, just a detail that I thought was interesting during that we learned in the meeting with the governor's aides was there's also $5 million proposed in next year's budget for land purchases for the Division of Natural Resources. They told us that is for a possible purchase, to go towards the possible purchase of land in Blackwater Canyon, which has been sort of a long time sort of fought over land. Sure. So that might be coming down the pike. All we know is that negotiations are going on with Allegheny Wood Products, the company that owns that land, and we don't know who would be the other parties that would chip in for that.
And that's one of the things that he did not mention, but we know is in his budget.
Yes.
Anna Sale, thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth.